4, 3, 2, 1. Incoming.
What's happening, Omnic Lab crew? We're a podcast called the Omnic Lab, and we're here doing another freaking interview. Like, unbelievable how much connections we've been able to just pull from emails, like right out of the gate. But if you're new here and you're just popping in, want to say that at the top of the show, yo, welcome. Hope you stick around for a while. We love doing this show. And basically, the synopsis is we're a podcast. We focus on strategy in Overwatch. We're for all levels of play, but we mostly try to stable in that big bell curve in the middle. But we're a lab focus. So we trial and error together. We're both learning with you and giving you tips that we're trying in and of ourselves. So sometimes things get a little crazy, blow up on our own faces, and maybe sometimes yours. But we're here to learn together and to progress through competitive. So we're gonna stir up like some strategies and tips to play better. Hopefully, equip you, the listener, with some instruments you need to gain that strategic edge. My name's Rob May, and joining me is Andres Gomez, the diamond in the rough of competitive play.
What's up, Rob? Yeah, like you
What's going
said,
on?
the show's picking up a lot, and we've had some really amazing guests in the past two episodes. Today, we are bringing you guys yet another awesome interview, this time with Fact Fiction from FaZe. All of you Reinhardt mains out there, rejoice, because this guy is a beast, Reinhardt, and he has some amazing input to give you guys. The interview already happened a couple of days ago, so as far as this part of the show, we'll just be talking a little bit about the World Cup. We'll be talking about a little bit about aiming and just bringing you some general updates on us. And then we're just gonna roll the interview for all of you. Yeah, stay tuned.
So thanks for joining us on the live show. For those of you that are here, and then if you're sitting on YouTube and you're like, well, what happens with us? Like, you're not going to give us the content? Well, sorta. We're going to give you a little bit more of a bonus content on YouTube. So if you're listening to the audio portion, this is going to be a little bit of a crazy show because we're going to do a little bit of extra stuff for our listeners that are live and those on YouTube. So at the end of the show, when we would normally say you're going to be listening to the interview, we're actually going to flip over and we're going to jump into some aiming practice with Andres behind the piloting wheel, and I'll be talking with him in the game, watching the stream a few seconds behind, asking questions. We'll go through a few routine things, and then we're actually going to jump into some games. And then I'm going to upload in post. I'm going to upload that video along with a link in the description for my point of view once we get to the game portions on plays.tv. So that's kind of just a quick synopsis of what we're doing today. But let's just go ahead and jump right into our very first segment that we always do. It's one of the most requested things besides the Going Deep episodes as far as day-to-day show is where we're at. So, Andres, why don't you kick it off? I've been talking a lot in the intro this week, so why don't you start us off?
Sure. Right now, I've been hovering pretty steadily around 3,000. I've been going up to like 3,100, sometimes falling to like 2950. So I think at least with the team that I'm playing with and for my own playing level with them, I think I'm kind of like reaching that plateau where the steady climb is decreasing a little bit, and a lot of effort or we have to put a lot of effort to if we want to keep climbing at this point. I have tried solo queuing a few times, and at this point, I do find myself that I'm at this threshold where, let's say, my McCree play is at the top of maybe like the platinum spectrum, but once I start getting into diamond, especially once you start getting playing with higher diamond guys and maybe a couple master guys here and there, like their McCree, or not even their McCree, but like their DPS is really, really good. So now I'm kind of like finding myself either at an even playing field with these guys or just being a little lower. So I almost feel like I have to step
Yeah.
up my McCree just a little more. So one I've been solo queuing or just doing it by myself. I've been trying to play other characters too, a little more supportive, kind of like Saria, or I played a lot of Lucio and stuff. Especially if I
Sure.
notice that one of the other guys, also has a ton of hours into DPS and he is like
Oh,
3,400. At that point, I kind of like dip off my head and I'm like, okay, sir, let's see
you
what you
win.
can do. Obviously, if they're not doing good, I'll still be like, hey, man, I can still McCree and I can still, and it's not like I can McCree or play DPS on those games, but
Oh yeah.
I do kind of have to be realistic at that point and be like, well, there are some other really good people out there that can DPS. So kind of been doing that, just farming comp points and trying to improve with the team. At this point, we're just kind of like refining our play. I think that we found our groove. We know our flow. We know how everyone plays. But at this point, it's a matter of, really nailing down those ultimates on the defense, like using them at
Yeah.
the right times or just coordinating stuff, trusting all of us to kind of like all going at the same time, and then not jumping the gun and maybe somebody going in beforehand or too late, that sort of stuff. How about you? What have you been up to?
So I've been playing probably the least of Overwatch since I started playing this week. And obviously that does not include my trip over to Japan, but um like I just haven't had any time this week. I've had so many, like I've literally had 4 or 5 classes a day, and then I've had all kinds of extracurriculars going on at school, and we had a big tournament going on this weekend that I had to coach. Finally found a church that I could attend this Sunday, and then I got invited over to my supervisor's house to go hang with her husband, and her kids with my wife, and it was really, really fun. That being said, that doesn't mean that I haven't been involved. So I did jump in with my good friend and admin Boombat from Australia, and we dropped 3 games. And poor Boom has dropped 250 to 300 SR in like less than 10 games, or less than 7 games, I think. And I dropped almost a full 100 just from doing 3 games, which tumbling that far normally would tilt you, like just from the synchronized like losing 3 games in a row, right? But for me, it was more tilting that like the guys that were on my team were the definition of why people hate Elo or use the term Elo hell. It was kind of like textbook examples, like Junkrat. We're on Hollywood, and we have one Junkrat who's literally outside of the spawn door just peppering it and just gets picked off in 2 shots. And we're down a man with like the opening of the gate. And I'm like, okay, I do not want to do this any freaking more. and that was like game 2. So I was tilting a little bit, but I'm actually really optimistic, aside from the normal salt that I would have, just because I really, really want to push, like you were saying, Andres, those competitive points for my Golden Mercy staff.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching a ton of videos, which we're going to get to, about aiming and pixel skipping even, and like just checking stuff out, because I know there's a couple guys from Envious that actually use the exact mouse model that I use. So I'm very curious as to how they work their sensitivities and stuff and test it out. And I'll basically I had a lot of success with it. So we'll mention that when we get to the aiming section. But
Cool, that's
we're
awesome.
having a lot of success with it.
Sounds like you guys.
Practice range.
Sorry, I was gonna say, sounds
Sorry,
like
go
you
ahead.
guys had a rough week, but I mean, everyone has some of those in Overwatch. I've had some really, really rough weeks in the past, to the point
Sure.
where I've had to like step away and be like, hey, I don't think I can play Overwatch at least for a couple of days. I need to clear my head. I don't want to end up throwing my mouse out of the window or worse.
It's too expensive to throw out the window, darn it.
Exactly. I
You
need to
take a break.
I need to control myself. Is a little cheaper if I just drink some water and think I walk around my neighborhood.
This is a game you can't play drunk if you want to climb, right?
Oh no, absolutely.
Oh,
I do
man.
not recommend this game drunk to anyone. I tried playing a little tipsy the other day. I had like 2 or 3 beers with my girlfriend. I was like, I'm just gonna jump on some quick play, and it was like I was a different person. I was like, nope, Can McCree.
Can't even. Will play for food. All right. All right, so let's just take a quick second to mention something at the top of the show about our Patreon. So this week we got 2 brand new patrons, and they're not just 2 brand new patrons, folks. These are our 250 platinum level patrons. So I am really excited to announce MaBMaN and John B as brand new patrons this week. So pumped that we're not just getting new patrons or that people are editing their pledges, but they're going at like this crazy top level. And Andres is going to spin it as to why this platinum level is so appealing for people right now.
All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about this. At the platinum level, we're now offering a new perk. You're able to submit some of your games or one of your games for review. I'll go through the entire game. I'll offer recommendations, my input on it. Like we've said before, I'm not a master level player that knows everything about the game, but I do spend a lot of time watching high level play. I do spend a lot of time perfecting my gameplay, and at least until diamond and around that rank, I can offer a lot of advice for you to improve your game, whether it is positioning or awareness or maybe focus targeting or maybe things that you might not notice on your own gameplay and you might not need somebody else to maybe point it out, like, hey man, maybe you can do this a little differently so you can be more effective for your team. So if you're interested in this, we're offering to all of our platinum level scientists. You can go to Patreon to check it out, and I just submitted a little video guide for all of you guys so that you know how to send me the game so that I have the easiest time commenting on it and giving it back to you. And it would be really cool if you're interested in this. Once the video is reviewed, we can post it on our channel for educational purposes for everyone so that everyone can get a little bit from the reviews. Or if you just prefer to keep it personal and it's just for you for your personal self-improvement, that is totally fine too. That is up to you. But anyway, if you're already a scientist level patron or are interested in this perk, I definitely encourage you to go check out the video. It's in our YouTube page right now. We will also be doing a Patreon post on the Patreon page for all of you guys there. And it's also posted in our Discord under the Patreon channel. And I think that
if you have more questions, you can feel free to just email us at omniclabpodcast@gmail.com, or you can jump over to our Discord, or you can just bite, scratch, and steal your way to try to find us, however you would like. So at this point in the show, we're going to go over some quick links and discussion over the aiming and World Cup discussion, and then we'll jump right into our fan fiction interview with a team member from FaZe on Reinhardt and his play. So let's get into the World Cup discussion first. Andres, take it away.
Sure. Before we start the World Cup discussion, we had some people in the chat asking, where do they catch the World Cup? Right now, the World Cup is being streamed by the official Blizzard channel, and there's a couple YouTube channels who are starting to post some of the VODs that have been recorded before. I am pretty sure that Blizzard itself is going to upload all of the official VODs for this event since it's one of their main events. So make sure to stay tuned. Check out their Twitch. Check out their Twitter to get it, stay up to date with how it's going. I know that the group stages already started and it's been super exciting. I unfortunately was working all day yesterday and I didn't have a chance to catch all of the games. I catched Spain versus Canada and the US versus Chile. Both super interesting. I would say that Spain versus Canada was probably like the most interesting of all. Just both of the teams were really good, and they had really good players on both of them. Really crazy
So do you
matches.
want to spoil any of this, or are we just gonna stay away from saying winners this week?
I think right now we're gonna stay away from saying winners and stuff, especially because by the time this episode comes out, all of the games will have concluded, and probably like the discussion and that will be kind of pointless by that time. But overall, we can just talk about like how it's going so far. I think the overall kind of like performance of the event is going really, really well. Seems like production value is at the top. The camera work is really nice. Like it was a lot easier to keep track of things. But the one thing I am going to say, and I understand that spectator mode is not out. They're still iterating all these things, but For the love of God, it is so freaking confusing to know which team is which when like the colors are switching
very true.
all over the place. It is only like blue and red, so the models are still kind of like the same. So sometimes you'll be watching like the McCree from one team, and then they'll switch to the McCree from the other team, and it kind of like takes a second for your brain to process that. It's like, wait, which McCree am I watching again? Especially when
I
they're
know
like,
it's red and I know it's blue, but I don't know which I'm supposed to associate that with.
and then it doesn't help then when they go into the next match, they switch the colors around. So now the team that used to be blue is red, and they use and vice versa, and it just adds to the confusion. And like yesterday, I was thinking about this, and I personally would think that this would be really badass, but it'd be really cool if they allowed the teams to submit their like country t-shirts,
colors,
because that's what they were playing. Like all the teams had their like country jerseys. Like imagine like the freaking soccer World Cup, and they rolled around with like their
that'd be
jersey
dope.
of the country, and like it would be really cool if they could submit their designs for the like actual skins of the characters, so that when like freaking the US goes to play and they pick Tracer or McCree, then they get like the American jersey version of them. And then when you're playing inside of the
That could be
game,
very interesting.
like you have like, you know, once you have Canada versus Spain, it's very easy to tell, kind of like when you're playing normal sports, like there's super easy to tell which team is which I think is not easy right now. And it could be only like for competitive events like this, right? But I think that would be a good idea.
I think it would be really cool, but like at the same time, I would much rather them make this more accessible to everyone than just for the top level of casting. You know what I mean? Like for this one event. And then at the same time, I think they should definitely do what World Championship stuff they did for League of Legends, which was basically the winning team gets to choose their favorite person or their favorite hero, or in League, it's their favorite champion. And then they work together with kind of like a general themed design for all 5 of the winners. So for Overwatch, it would be all 6 of them, and have them pick like one of each of the characters that they like to play the most that doesn't have a lot of skins yet, that they played in the final series, and then just give them like a theme for all 6 characters. So they would all have like jerseys from either the country or the team. So like Samsung White, or they have like SKT Telecom from Korea, and then they have like Fnatic from season 1. So it was like really cool stuff. I think that would be dope if they
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know they do something like that with heroes. Like whenever a team wins their world championship, they get a mount.
Yeah.
To be honest, I wouldn't be so interested in owning a skin that was by like the winning team, but I would think it would be cool to have for them to have different skins to differentiate them in game. Kind of like, hey, this is the US, and hey, this is Spain, and you can clearly tell it in the game, aside than just like the banners up top.
Red and blue.
But I'm sure that like some people out there would be super interested in you know, owning skins of the winning team, and like that would kind of add to kind of like the competitiveness of it. Another thing is I do really enjoy that they've been doing it this by country, separating it kind of like by region, but like that, because if you can take the best players from anywhere around the world, like there will be like some teams that get formed pretty easily. There's like, hey, well, this is the cream of the crop. This is it, right? But this way, it kind of forces everyone to find the best players around their region, and kind of like, I don't know. I like the competitive aspect of countries versus countries. What do you think about this? Do you think it would be better if it was just kind of like clubs, like it is right now, like individual teams that can pick up any player anywhere in the world and can play, or do you like the country stuff better?
Honestly, I'm in the favor of just doing something different, so I like what they're doing. I know that sounds really cliche to say, because I just like it when they do something different, and it's not like League of Legends Worlds where like there are teams from each region, but the teams from each region are represented by the team that is there. So for example, you know, Cloud9 or Envious would be from, you know, United States or Europe. So I do get that, but they're over time it kind of blurs the lines as far as like, oh, there's 2 people on their roster that are from Korea that are, you know, playing for Cloud9, but they just moved to NA, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like a true a true representation of it. However, you could argue, you know, United States is a melting pot in the first place, so who cares, right? But
Yeah, some countries have a lot of room to pick from. And I agree with
Yeah.
that. But still, like I feel like even then, like each region, whether it's big or small, like each one has a little niche, right? Like they'll usually speak the same language, and the culture around it is kind of like the same. And even like small regions like can be really really competitive. I mean, you only have to look at like
Yeah.
Korea or Japan, and like the gamers that come out from there are super super amazing. But the other thing I really like about them doing it this way, just by countries, is that it allows the chance for players to be discovered a little easier, right? Like when you have these organizations that are sponsoring players already, and like it becomes a more like closed out club where like to break in you almost have to like have some connects into like these people, right? But when you establish it by region, then like sure, you'll have the top people that have already been established in these teams and that are doing really good on the ladder, that the initial people that get selected for these batches. But then these people are like, well, I can't really play with like my entire Overwatch team that I have right now. I have to pick like other people that are just good in my region and try to work the best. And I think it promotes like this environment where players are gonna try to find other players close to them or in the same country that are really good and force themselves to kind of like do that. And we've seen this already. Like a lot of the teams are made up of pro Overwatch players that get a salary right now to just play Overwatch, and like amazing non-pro Overwatch players, which, like I said, gives them a chance to show their skills, show how good they are, and that not only paid Overwatch pros are the ones who can really bring the heat in this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Sorry, I got really distracted in the middle of that discussion. I realized that my audio recorder didn't go. So up until that point, I haven't gotten my audio recorded outside of the stream. So I apologize for that.
Well, you
Um,
guys might notice a little change in Rob's voice quality beyond this point.
yeah. So just a little heads up. Sorry about that, folks. Listening on the audio portion, we'll get it back. But okay, so let's just hit the highlights real quick because we don't have a whole lot of time for the rest of the audio listeners. But what are some of the big things that you've noticed outside of just like regional differences, and like what were meta picks, what was working for each team without giving away too much of the detail, like what was working and what
So far
teams
right now,
surprised you?
this has been all over the place. Like we said, these are not like the regular Overwatch teams that have been playing since the open beta. Like these teams have been changed and broken down, and like players all over the place, kind of like readapting, learning how to play together. So we've seen all kinds of strategies, from nano boosted Symmetras to just like Tracer, Genji solely on the attack. The Reaper nano boosting, of course, is still strong. We've seen a lot of that. So far, I think we've seen a good combination of the 2-2-2 and also triple tank with 1 DPS and 2 healers. The US versus Chile, they even pulled out a Bastion at one point. So
Dang.
I think that it's been hard, especially just with the first few games going on, of really like talking about a meta in the tournament, because it's been all over the place. Like I said, picks that you wouldn't expect, and sometimes it depends also on the team, right? Like some teams actually don't have like a super strong McCree that can take out, like for example, Seagull's Genji. So they'll have to adapt, and they'll be like, okay, what is the next best thing that we are like really good at to take out this monster Genji? Stuff like
I'm
that.
really glad that that's something that you said, because like this just reinforces the Overwatch like quote unquote hard counters that we've mentioned on numerous shows, right? Like it doesn't really matter necessarily what the counters are and the hard counters are, and like when you drop down and you hit like the 1v1, it really matters like what you're good at, where your comfort pick is, and where your skill is within that comfort pick. Like there's that, you tiptoe that balance between what you're comfortable and what you like to play versus what's currently strong at the top level and like what works for that individual player. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of interactions like that in Overwatch where people will tell you, "Hey, this guy is a counter to this guy." And sure, you can counter that guy, but you have to know how to execute it. Like for example, a lot of people will say, "Hey, Winston counters Genji," but a good Genji will learn how to time Winston's leap, stay away from him as needed, fire from afar, and then only go in when needed, or just kind of like outright ignore it until he has a chance and kill him when he has to. Or same with McCree. A lot of people say, "Hey, McCree counters Genji," but a good Genji knows that McCree can be really vulnerable at certain situations. For example, when his flashbang is down, and can really take advantage of that. Or when
Yeah.
McCree is reloading, for example, he actually has a quite a slow reload time. So good Genjis will take advantage of all of these little weaknesses and stuff. And same with like, it's a skill matchup. Like you can kill Genji as McCree, but you better have darn good aim if you're trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just reading the chat. They one of the guys in the chat was saying that, not only were the picks kind of off meta or kind of a little bit crazy on the crazy side, but just that sheer surprise factor is actually not just doing craziness, but was actually winning. It was actually turning the tide of battle because it was so surprising, and because that surprise factor mixed with the skill of practicing it is very lethal.
Although I agree with what he's saying too. For Sporge says that a lot of the crazy picks were brought out on matches where they were already stumping the other team, and I definitely agree with that. On the matches where they were a little
makes sense.
more comfortable, then they kind of decided to be a little more flashy and bring out other picks. But that also
Yeah.
goes to show that like those teams also know when their skills are being kind of met and when they're kind of like a little bit ahead of the team and they can get a little more experimental, get away with a few more things. Like yeah, if you're gonna
Sure.
go attack Bastion and you're against like freaking Surefour and like some other crazy Genji like that you don't want to mess with, then you might not want to do that. But if you're doing it against a team that doesn't have like that skill level, then Bastion actually can be quite good.
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
All right. Is
I
there
think
anything else
that'll
you want
wrap
to
it up,
mention?
at least for now, for the World Cup. We're not going to talk too much about this because it's just starting. And by the time the episode comes out, this discussion, like we said, will
It's gonna
already be
late.
a little bit outdated. So we just wanted to say our initial impressions. And we'll probably have a more in-depth discussion once we see more of the matches and how it
Sure.
evolves.
Yep. So let's jump into the aiming section, which is going to be like not just aiming, but more or less like kind of like your practice drills. What's your routine when you jump into Overwatch before you hit quick play or before you click into competitive? Like, what do you do to warm up? What do you do to practice? What are your Overwatch fundamentals, as it were? So we're going to break down what Andres does, but this is just the stuff that I've been researching this weekend and what I've been trying to check out. So I came across a couple things in the Discord over the course of the last 2 weeks, but mostly the last couple days from Taimu. He's a player from Envious, and he used to be one of their like lethal Widow players, but now he's been playing a crap ton of like McCree play. And so he wanted to show what he did when he hit the practice range. And it ended up divulging into about half of the video is kind of like how to do practice flick shots with McCree. And then he goes and shows you a Genji combo, which is basically, right click melee swift strike. And he's like, this combo does 200 damage or whatever it was. I'm not going to tell you what exactly he said because I want you to go watch the videos because these guys are amazing to watch. And they give you a desk cam to show you about how far his mouse is moving on the pad so you can kind of pay attention to what his mouse sensitivity is. And then he shows you another shorter video about pixel skipping, which I'm going to probably take the time to switch this back over to Andres before we move on. But like pixel skipping is a deal. So basically, he had a mouse set for 400 CPI or DPI, depending on how nerdy you want to get about it. And then he has the in-game sensitivity set to 10 and barely moves his mouse against on his pad to show you pixel by pixel movement, like very slight movement on to show you precision. Then he switches his mouse to 1600 DPI and drops it all the way down to 2.5 in the in-game sensitivity, and it is smooth as glass. And it is definitely not his mouse. So there's something in the system when you're running 400 DPI for whatever reason that pixel skipping occurs. Anders, is there any other pixel skipping things that you know about, like just in general, not necessarily like with this specific video?
I think that is the only one, and it's just like a small test that people have been doing where at low DPIs and higher sensitivities, yeah, like sometimes like the mouse will skip a pixel, and it's a very small like little error, but you can see it demonstrated in the video. And if you play at higher DPIs with lower sensitivities, this doesn't happen to be the case. So when you're trying to get the most consistency out of your system, you do want to get rid of these small little errors. I don't think that if you're just starting to practice your aim, this is gonna do like that much of a difference. But in the world of perfecting yourself just little by little, you definitely don't want to have these little errors, because that might be the difference between hitting a headshot or a body shot from a far distance and missing it, right? At shorter distance, that might not be that much of a problem, but once you increase the distance, like 1 pixel can actually be like quite a bit off.
Yeah, and like that flick shotting, it seems like just from doing flick shots on McCree alone, it seems like that little pixel can be all the worth of change just to get that down to muscle memory.
Yeah, too. Let's talk about that for a second, though, because I've watched the Taimu video before, and to be completely honest, I would recommend not doing that at all. If you are just starting to practice your aim and you're trying to like get a good grasp on muscle memory, I would recommend staying away from the flick shot video and not attempting that until you're a little more advanced. Taimu is showing a technique that is very advanced and is also very stylistic. That is the way that he plays, and it's not necessarily the right way, it's just Taimu's way. And if you watch him play in his actual competitive matches, that is the way he plays. He's always flicking. Some players will be more like track oriented or kind of like a mixture of both, but Taimu is very flick oriented. Well, where he will almost always not aim directly at the person, but just kind of like near it and then flick when he's ready to do his shot. And he's gotten used to that. He's gotten really good. As you can tell, he practices the flicks in the video. But then if you go look at somebody else like Surefor or what's his name, Mendo Kusai.
I don't think Seagull does it that way either.
I haven't seen much of Seagull playing McCree. I always see him kind of playing Mercy. I mean, not Mercy, Zarya, Mei, or Genji. But for example, if you look at Mendo Kusai or Surefor, Surefor has kind of like a hybrid style where he will track and flick and do like a mini flick as needed. And then you have guys like Harry Hook, where if you look at him, he is all tracking, and is amazing how he just kind of like locks the cursor on the character, and he will follow the character as it moves, like to the T. Like it's almost like the cursor is glued
on the head.
Yeah, it's glued to the character. Sometimes not even to the head. It might be to the body, to the head, whatever. But you follow it. Like it's almost like tracer aiming. You know what I mean? Like, and that is his style. And then as he's tracking it, he shoots when he sees appropriate. But he almost never flicks the mouse. So like I said, flicks and stuff, that is a very stylistic thing that Taimu does. If that is your thing, if you're very twitchy and flicks are kind of like the way you play, you can go that route too.
Go for it.
But in honesty, I would recommend that, at least for aiming, you truly want to build your muscle memory first, and you want to get really, really comfortable with your mouse, and specifically like how mouse movement translates into movement in Overwatch. You almost want to make that a subconscious thing. Like you don't really want to think about it. You want to know that if you move your mouse 2 inches to the left, then the character will be aiming, like 15 degrees left or something like that. Likewise, just being able to move around while holding your aim steady in the direction that you need to aim is also really important. Like you'll notice, for example, with more inexperienced players who haven't practiced their aiming that much, when they move, their aim is all over the place. It's almost like watching bad camera work. Like, did you ever watch what's that
Yeah.
movie with the monster that you have to that they film it with like first person?
Cloverfield?
Yeah, Cloverfield. It's like watching
That
Cloverfield.
was awful.
Yeah,
It's
and
like that or Blair Witch Project.
exactly. The camera just shakes all over the place. Like even if they just move slightly right or left, it's like an earthquake just happened. And then you go look at a player that is more experienced or a professional player, and you see that their camera work is super smooth. Like the way they look around, the way they move their mouse is very, very practiced and refined. And then even
Yep.
when they turn around is very precise. Like they have that 180
Zeroing
turn
on it, man.
zeroed in. They know exactly how much they have to move their mouse to turn around 180, 60 degrees, 15 degrees.
Yeah, so this point is extremely critical for those of you. Like this is exactly why I found another, maybe a lesser known YouTuber called Loose Arrow Boy, and he has an aiming video. I think I linked the intermediate guide, but he has a beginner to intermediate and an intermediate to advanced guide. So please go check out this video and then go into his archives and see if you can find the other one, or it should be in the description, or even in an annotation on this exact video. But like I watched both of these, and to Andres's point, I noticed that the flick thing was a little bit more stylized. And I use flick shots on McCree. I do like that style, but I don't do it to the extent that Taimu does. I have a much smaller flick shot, and it's usually that I'm tracking them, and then I use the flick to kind of just like zero in on the head right as I'm firing. So I kind of adjust it, like I could lead them a little bit because I play a lot of projectile heroes like Mercy and Zenyatta and Mei. So my projectile heroes leading, I kind of flick backwards towards where the head is and then click for the zero delay hit scan. So he shows you a lot of drills. He talks about the Ana drill that we talked about in the show before, but he modifies it by saying, you know, you boost your damage, you make it headshots only, and then you increase the respawn time. And then he tells you 2 maps that you should do it on and set it for skirmish. So it's like a little bit more, I don't know, I really like the way that he approached it. And then on top of that, the beginner guide is something where he talks about in-game sensitivity, out-of-game sensitivity with your mouse, finding that sweet spot, and then he'll even go into depth as to say there are flick shots and there are hit scan type drills, and then there are, you know, leading and tracking type drills that you'll have to practice completely separate. So for example, if you're like Andres said, if you're playing Tracer, you got to learn how to track, and you got to learn how to just follow targets. So you like run into there and you just kind of walk around where all the targets are, and you don't shoot anything. You just follow them with your mouse. And then you start moving and following with your mouse. Then you start using your blink and following with your mouse. So it's pretty amazing, the things that he was going in here. And then you can even understand DPI and CPI and how they work in the tech quickie video that we linked here as well. So I say all that to say, after watching all this crap, I also was watching some other things that are actually sitting in the helpful links about, it's basically a how-to Mercy guide from a master / top 500 player called Oasis. And then there's 2 other guides on a 1v1 guide and a positioning guide by Animedic on YouTube for Mercy. And I got super hyped after being tilted. So I'm like really jazzed about going in, because after all these changes, I changed my mouse sensitivity to 800 again after trying out 1600 at low sense and 400 at high sense in game. And I still like the 800 DPI, but I went from 8 to 4, Andres, on the in-game sensitivity. And boy, let me tell you, I didn't have enough space on my extra large mouse pad. I had to go back up to 5.
Yeah, 4
So what I
seems
did
like
is a
really
little
low. Because I play at 1600. I think I play with 4.5 at 1600. So yeah, that seems quite low.
Yeah, so I went to 800 at 5, and I really like it. I really, really like it. I might even go up to 5.5 or somewhere between 5.5 and 5, just because, like, I changed it, and I was like, okay, so I know everyone says, put it on the far left side of your mat, and then you go all the way to the right side of your mat, and that should be 60 degrees or 360 degrees, right? Full 360 from side to side. Well, I did it a little differently. I got from like the center of my mat, and I tried to do a 180 and get it close to the edge. Because I'm a little bit more wrist happy when I like to use my shots, and I know that I like a little bit higher sensitivity just from playing League of Legends for a long time. Plus, sometimes I have stuff on my USB that kind of interferes with my mat, so I wanted to make it a little bit smaller than the actual mat size. And that worked amazing. Like I was going in there, I started working on my posture and my arm, and just from changing my posture alone and using my arm more, I'm telling you, this is the first time I got in the practice range with a character that I'm not super comfortable on, like McCree, and I didn't miss a shot for like 5 minutes. I was like, this is amazing.
Nice. I think that for as far as sensitivity goes, like you can tell people, hey, use this number, use this other number for all day, but I don't think that is too useful. Honestly, the best advice I can give you for sensitivity is find one where you feel comfortable aiming, and to do that is not like, hey, just go in there and find a fast one or a slow one that works for you. But there are ways to kind of like gauge this a little bit. One of the ways that I'd use, and we'll probably show it later on the video when we go into the practice range, but I got this from a YouTuber. I can't remember the name, but we've linked him before in the show. Basically, you go into the practice range, pick a static bot, any static bot, and then stand in front of it with a character like McCree, and just strafe from left to right. And as you're strafing from left to right in the bot, move your mouse in the opposite direction so that your crosshair is always stuck to the head of the dummy. Basically, as you're moving from left to right, you want to keep that crosshair locked in. And then you can detect a couple of things if your sensitivity is not right or if you're not too comfortable with it. And that is, if it is too high, you will more than likely be over compensating, or how do you say that? Like you'll notice your aim will start going ahead of the head.
It'll drift in a certain direction.
Yeah, it'll drift ahead of the head if it's too high. And if it's too low, it'll kind of like lag behind the head as you're moving. So you want to find a spot where one, yes, it makes sense with your mouse pad. Normally, you want to play with a big enough mouse pad that you have some real estate to move around. At least for mine, right. I find that to do a 180, like you said, I have to, from the center, I have to move it about like 40 to 45% towards the edge. I don't have to move it totally towards the edge, but almost all the way there. And that's kind of where I found my sweet spot was. But I went into the practice range and I made sure by trying it out with my own mouse, my own pad, and made sure that, hey, this is a sensitivity where I can actually lock onto targets and keep it steady with the real estate that I'm working on and the sensitivity that I'm working on. That's kind of how you want to gauge it, I think.
Yeah, and to kind of wrap up here, like that was actually mentioned in the video from what's his name? Loose Arrow Boy. So please go check that out. It will help you so much. Like it'll kind of recap it and show it to you in video form if you're not watching the extended video from ours. Just another great video to go check out. He's very organized. So the other little bit of information to go along with what Andres was saying that I really recommend is do a lot of different things and just try it out. Like don't be the guy that says, I'm going to do what this person does. I'm just going to copy that. Like, I don't think that's the best way to do it. I kind of did that initially, and like I needed to go lower. And I've always been a high sensitivity, like filthy MOBA player. And I finally dropped it all down, and I'm like, I'm not missing shots. Like you actually have the capability of hitting things.
I agree with that. To find your aim, to find your stuff is something you have to work on. I don't think it's something you can go on YouTube, watch a few videos and be like, oh, that's how you aim. It's really one of those things that you have to practice. It's like playing an instrument, and you have to find a position you're comfortable with. You have to find how to best move your arm, how to, all these little nuances. And it takes some time. The last thing I'm going to say to wrap it up in this discussion on aiming is, take advantage of the practice range, and not just with heroes like McCree or Widow. Like, you can go in there with literally any hero and practice a ton of different things. And it doesn't even have to be like raw aim. I'll go into the practice range and I'll still practice, for example, fan the hammer. I'll try to fan the hammer in one fan the hammer, kill a one target dummy from a medium distance, then from a short distance. Then I'll try to do it as they're moving from left to right. And this, like, it builds your muscle memory so that once you're in the game, like, you have done that before, and then your fan of hammers become more consistent. Now that we're gonna go into our interview, you're gonna hear our guest talk about him going into the practice range with Reinhardt, none other than any other
Believe
hero.
it or not.
Like, you would think that if there was a hero you didn't have to practice in the practice range, it would be Reinhardt, right? Like, you'd be like,
Reinhardt.
why would you be practicing with Reinhardt in the practice range? Well, a pro player, one of the best Reinhardts in the world, goes into the practice range with Reinhardt. He mostly does it to practice his charges and his shockwaves and stuff like that. Obviously, there's not much aim you can practice with a hammer, but there's a bunch of little tricks and nuances that you can practice with. And like we said, aim is not the only thing you can build into your muscle memory. You can also build cooldown timers. You can also build in, turn around and charging really fast. Or there's a bajillion things that you can lock into your muscle memory to just make you a better player. And I think that'll conclude the aim practice discussion.
Yep. So with that being said, please enjoy the interview. It is amazing. And here you go. This is FaZe, FaZe's team with Fact Fiction. Enjoy. So now that we've wrapped up the interview, let's jump into some quick iTunes reviews. So we have 4 iTunes reviews from all over. Like, I am blown away. I think we're just going to read one because the show's probably going to be going pretty long with our interview this week. So I'll read this one from Omnic H from USA. It says, best Overwatch podcast. I downloaded Omnic Lab to listen to at work and was blown away at how engaging and interesting the discussion was. I've listened to almost all of the archive now, in parentheses, he says, in 1.5 weeks. Luckily, I can listen to podcasts all day at work. I was like, man, props to you. That's a lot of over Omnic view listening. Sorry, like, I got all my podcasts mixed up. That's a lot of Omnic listening. And I can't wait to listen for the next episode to come out. Out of the several Overwatch podcasts I've tried, Omnic Lab was by far my favorite, and varied content being accessible to new players like myself. I especially love all the tips and tricks and really like the in-depth hero episodes. Keep up the great work. Thanks so much for your iTunes review. It means a lot. That pretty much summarizes what we're really trying to do here on the Omnic Lab. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And then we have 3 more reviews that we will not be reading just for sake of time, from Desire, from Australia, from Bardic DM in USA, and Greco507 in USA. Thank you guys for your iTunes reviews. It helps the show so much. Let's jump into where you can find Omnic Lab. We've mentioned a few places, but on Twitter and Facebook, you can look up the tag Omnic Lab. Just no spaces, and you'll find us. If you want to jump on to Discord with us, you can go over to discord.me/OmnicLab. That's discord.me/OmnicLab into your browser, not into the Discord app. If you want to email the show any questions or topics or interviews or links to pro players for some more folks that we can maybe get on the show, you can email us at omniclabpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to share the show, we are on iTunes, we're on Google Play Music, and we're on any Android app that knows what's up. You can find us there. And if you want to donate to the show and give us a few tips, and check out some of the perks you can get over at patreon.com/OmnicLab. If you guys want to catch us on the weekends, we're streaming on Twitch and on YouTube with the same tags of Omnic Lab and our website as well. You can also find out some sweet new fall merch with our new hoodies over at omniclab.com and check out the shop tab. Andres, where can we find you?
If you want to personally find me, you can find me on Twitter at iPlayGames. You can also find me streaming Overwatch here in this same channel, which we are probably going to do in just a little bit. And then if you want to listen to my Hearthstone podcast, you can find it on Coin Concede. warmups.com or on iTunes as well.
And you can find me over at Twitter and Instagram with the same tag of NotRob, and on plays.tv/u/NotRob is where you'll find my gameplay. Will be uploading, like I said, the show from aim practice and games that we played tonight, just my perspective of what Andres did, and we'll try to upload everything to YouTube with my plays in the mirror description. You can find my Overwatch my Hearthstone podcast is called VelonsChosen.com. And you can find us over there. It's a little bit more budget side of the game of Hearthstone. Thanks so much for joining us on episode 27, fan fiction interview and aiming practice. We'll see you guys next week. Remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist, practice your aim, and profit. We'll see you guys next week.